Good evening, everyone. Tonight, special guest, Aaron C., who has comics that will reign forever as the Immortal Rising.
There we go.
How's it going?
Very good. Today's been a pretty good day. I'm working a lot of overtime this week, so I like that. That's always good.
Well, yeah, I mean, extra money's always good.
Money.
So I have seen you on a bunch of shows, but I haven't had time to get you in for a while. One thing that interested me is, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Sure.
you made the Immortal Rising comics as a way to make a tabletop role-playing game.
Actually, it is based on a homebrew world that I played today. So
Okay.
that's really what it is. Now later, I will be doing like a source book with. I'm hoping to work with was it Scryin Dutchman and maybe chop up
Nice.
something, kind of do some put some stats to different things that are unique to my world, that kind of stuff. So looking forward to that.
Very cool. I'm especially interested because I went the opposite route. I was going to make a comic, and I ended up making a campaign guide for a tabletop role playing game. So, what was the how'd you make the decision? Comic first, source guide later.
Ooh, yeah. So basically, how this all started was I'm taking notes, writing stuff down because the world that I play on, it's been around. I mean, it started when I was a teenager, right? I'm in my 40s now, and it's like I don't remember everything, And I was tired of asking my other players because I have a couple players that have way better memory than I do, and so I'm like, let me just start taking a timeline and make notes of everything that was going on so that I could remember as we keep going on, some of the bigger events or even the smaller stuff. And so as I'm going, I'm writing out these events in the timeline, and that event, I've always kind of dabbled with writing in one way or another, essays, poetry, music, short stories, that kind of stuff. And so as I'm writing the timeline, I slowly, it started expanding itself, put it that way, until it became a scene, and like people are talking in the scene, and I'm like, oh no, that means I have to write the story, and it was pretty clear to me that I had to tell it, and so at first it was just for us, it was just kind of like for the people who were there, that has been on the table, maybe have gone away or still on the table. I was like, I bet you they'd love to see something like this. So I was like, as the script started coming out of me, I'm like, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to make a novel, or maybe a comic book? Because I love both, and I'm like, well, I really like comics, not a lot of fantasy, really good fantasy comics, and one of the things that always attracted me to the fantasy genre is the art, right? And so when I started talking to a character design artist, Steve Whitehead, I was, when I started seeing the feedback come back, I was like, oh my God, this is, I don't know, it kind of lit a passion in me, fire. And I'm like, I have to do it. I have to do it. So I had I found an artist on the original version of the book, because there's more than one version of the first book. It was an Indonesian artist. He's amateur. He was a cool dude, but he was tough to work with because their government kept shutting off the internet, and it was like, damn, dude, like, a lot of political unrest over there. And anyways, as I was waiting to hear from him, I was like, another part of the story started coming out. So it was like I started seeing me telling the story from a different perspective, not just like a first level kind of RPG perspective, but also from the 20th level version, like the God characters. Because at that point we had God characters who were, who knew the meta story, but the first level characters don't know any of that's going on. So I wrote a short story to get it out of my system, as I have to do. And I was like, man, that would be so cool just to kind of keep it moving creatively, keep those wheels turning. I was like, let me look for another artist. And that's when I found Jose Garcia, my main artist now. And I mean, he loves drawing the God story. Like, that's his favorite part of all this, is
Mhm.
like just going crazy big on all the details and all that stuff. And I love writing for him. So it was kind of like a match made in heaven. Plus, he was actually looking to get into comics and get away from animation, is what he was doing. We just happened to, stars aligned, and things worked out great. And yeah, that's kind of how it all originally came together. So fast forward a
Uh,
few years, and here I am.
yeah, Patty's Parlor has a great question. When you were taking notes, how much was cut before writing the actual script for a comic?
Ooh, good question. So, as a lot of games go, there's a lot of nonsense. Like, players will take things in a different direction. Um, and not only that, so I guess to sum up the answer is, quite a bit. A lot of it's just based off of the the characters and the story that we were doing, and which kind of I kind of stepped over was, I was like, hey guys, I want to write a story about our table. What should I, where should I start? And
Mhm.
unanimously, they all agreed on where we're at with the calling. So, and I agree. It's like, it's a really good, good stepping off point for people who aren't familiar with our homebrew world. But anyway, so what I tried to do was, I know these characters, where they started, what happens to them, where they go, how they, some of them end, and I was like, I can't say everything they did, because like I was saying, sometimes you'll have whole sessions or multiple sessions where it's like it kind of goes off into a different direction. Is like, I had to bring it down and simplify a lot of it, and just kind of get a general idea, while also, because in comics you don't have, like, you gotta, it was that action economy, like
Mhm.
you only have so much room to say what needs to be said. So I was like, I need to cut out the shopping sessions or whatever. So I'm just keep it really short and tight, and that's what I try to do.
Hmm.
It's like, I know this character. Here's his attitude. Here's how they would react in this situation. This is basically what they went through, very simplified, and then put it into a story. Yeah.
Interesting. So one thing that or one danger, I would say, to creating stories from what your homebrew game is, like, how do you go about um trying to separate out things that everyone would find interesting versus things that your friends would find interesting? Because, like, when it's a lot of times when you're trying to tell someone about, like, oh, I did this at this session and that, it
Yeah.
ends up being one of those, well, you had to be there kind of stories. So, like, how
Yeah.
do you?
The inside jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. I don't know. I guess, as it, and you can kind of see some of it, like my writing evolved, because I know I'm used to writing like, like a, almost like a novel form or an essay form and stuff like that. So in comics is its own art form. So um there's a lot of stuff that, originally, my editor is like, that makes no sense, that's dumb, I don't know what that means. So a lot of that stuff had to get pushed away to really get down to this, the real sauce, like the
Mhm.
real meat and potatoes of it, to keep using food metaphors for some reason. So it was like, you really had to just concentrate the point of it all. So a very condensed version of it. And
Mm.
yeah, all the inside joke. There's a few. Well, one of the things that I kept was their names. All of their names are the same as they were. So, like, one of the things that one of the, somebody that read the story was like, well, how come, this person's name is this? Like, for instance, in issue 2, I introduced the group's wizard, whose name is Onai, which, is a Japanese word, Oni, which,
Mhm.
is like, means ghost or something like that. So And I was like, that's his name. you know, that's just the way we're gonna go with it, and we're gonna, and I wanted to keep, and or like for instance, one of the god characters' name is Listo.
Mhm.
Another one is Erickson. Like those don't necessarily, and he doesn't look Viking, and he's an elf. But I wanted to keep true to that, that tabletop feel. Is like, yeah, sometimes you have ridiculous, kind of stuff without getting too ridiculous. It's still believable.
Yeah, I have problems. I had a wizard who was, one of the most powerful wizards in the world,
Yeah.
and his name was Tim. And I had one player who was like, "No, I just can't buy into it."
Come on, Monty
So
Python. My name
I
is
know, I know.
Tim.
So I changed I changed it so that if you read between the lines, his initials spell out Tim. But
There we go.
I'm not
See,
going to give
stuff
up on
like
that
that.
joke.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Um, so yeah, so how did you, when you've got a whole campaign setting, there's
Yeah,
so much information,
yeah.
and there's so many points of interest. Did you say like, well, I'm just going to go back to when they were level 1 and start the story there, or was there like one part that stuck out to you more than others, and like, oh, I got to start with this story?
So, like I had said, I asked the table. We were in a group chat, and I was just like, "Hey guys, I want to write the story. Where do you think I should start? Um, like for somebody outside outside of our table, where do you think would be a good jumping in point?" And like they all unanimously said we should start at the calling, and I agree because it was like it's kind of interesting is we went from second edition D&D to 3.5 D&D,
Hmm.
and um it wasn't exactly at that point, but it was the adventure kind of like building up to that jump off point. So like we had started, and it was like an adventure where we had a really brand new table. I had a few new players who kind of like had migrated from another table, and they were looking for a DM, and I've been a forever DM off and on, like now we share the DM responsibility, but I was a forever DM for quite a while. And it was like, yeah, that's where we're going to go. And I wanted to start it from their first level, mainly because I find that more interesting as like to see them grow, like
Hmm.
you're going to see these characters change over time with the basically the trauma that happens to them, and I thought it was a compelling way to look at it as like a D&D party. If you kind of look at it in a realistic way, there's a lot of trauma with battle and physical danger and all that other stuff, and then also maturing, you know uh through all of that. I thought was it appealed to me, like I remember coming up, not necessarily the best conditions, and I thought it was a good way to kind of like work through some of that stuff too, I guess, not to be too I don't know, not to be too crybaby about stuff, but I was like, I know what it's like growing up as a young man going through hard shit and coming out
Hmm.
the other side. And I thought that would be something that would be universal for a lot of people. And it
For
plays
sure.
right into their stories. What happens to these characters is really interesting, and where they end up becoming is it's compelling because you can see. Wait a minute, you all went through this, and yet your personality took you this way, your personality took you that way. And it's just I was like, that's really interesting, so I went for it.
Nice. Um, Is Do you have any worries since you're more or less using your players' characters? Like, does that add any extra stress to you that, oh, I really got to nail it when I write it? Or do you like give it to them to sort of look over first, or is it,
um
just go for the best?
well, so I don't know how much you get into writing stories and stuff, but most of the people I know around me, they don't read my
Mhm.
shit. So there is a player or two that actually does read the stuff that I produce and is interested in all this stuff. So yeah, I'll get feedback from them. They'll be, be like, oh, I like how you kind of explain that or how you express that. But like, I think one of the most unique parts of it is that they were kind of, it was like my nephew and a couple of his friends, and they were young and basically the age of the characters, right? And so
Mhm.
like, and personality clashes and stuff like that are going to be in the book because that's what they brought to the table in those characters. They butted heads every now and again, and I wanted to portray that because that does happen, with friends, especially when you're, testosterone young men. That a lot of that can happen, and I thought it would be fun to just put that
Definitely.
on paper. You know, like they make fun of each other. They disagree a lot. They argue over who's going to be in charge, basically. So a lot of that happens early on in the story.
Hmm.
And by
Um,
early on, I mean the first 3 books, which I'm on only book 2. So
uh, and speaking of which, so we have the Indiegogo Immortal Rising 2 Burnt Offerings.
yes, sir.
Um, so what was sort of the biggest challenge for you going from, sort of writing prose over to comics, which is, I'd say, probably like 60-40 visual versus written medium.
Yeah. So one thing that I really had to, so the first one, I would say, how do I put this? When I first wrote the story, there was much more like detail, maybe dialogue and all that other stuff, and it was more than needed to be. So with doing the comic, it's really, now I think I've gotten better at it because I've written more,
Mhm.
in that form. So, but at first it's like you want to get these different perspectives down. You kind of want to get this nice little poetic or superfluous kind of narrative bites in there and stuff like that, or maybe explain things through dialogue. And now as I go forward, it's kind of like, well, you got to cut all that out, and really boil it down, like I was saying before, and concentrate it into its real essence. And instead of having 10 lines, you've got to get it in one, to
Yeah.
really show what the character's perspective is. There is no bantering back and forth. It's very different.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's way easy to have too much dialogue. And not
Yeah,
only
we
that, it's not just like the talky part, but it also, the more dialogue bubbles you have, blocks the beautiful art. So,
Yep.
you just got to
We
get to the point.
Not everyone can go full Chris Claremont.
Right?
Um, so when you first decided I'm gonna do this, you mentioned you had the guy from Indonesia.
Hmm.
I'm gonna ask you a name later because I'm curious about one thing. Off the air, I want to ask you about that. But
Oh, his name's in the credits, actually.
oh, is it
Yeah,
interesting?
as
I'm
you
gonna have
go
to take
through
a look.
the campaign, I offer the original version. I printed out 100 of them, and then yeah, meet the team. Yeah, he's down there. Kofarosa is what he wanted to go by. So,
Oh, okay. No,
yep.
I hired a guy who said he was from Malaysia, and
Hmm.
thank God I picked the campaign guide before I picked a comic, because
Yeah.
this guy, I hired him for 10 images, and he's delivered
Yeah.
like 5, and the last 2 were like pulling teeth to get from him, and then he
Oh,
just like
geez.
disappeared. And then
Yeah.
it's funny, there were 2 other people who hired him for comics, and he just like ghosted them too. So I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, dodged
I
a
mean,
bullet there. But he was
it's
fantastic.
it's really difficult to find an artist that you can work with, that is reliable. Not to bash on artists, but I'm not the only writer that I talk to that has said, like a friend of mine right now, he's dealing with a team that is not very responsive. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, like he made the mistake of putting money up front, and so he's waiting. It's like, wow, don't put all the money up front.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
that's another thing that me and Jose, we hit it off, is like, it's true we don't have a contract, which I totally think that you should do, but he's just such a good dude. The two of us, we've worked together for a few years now on different things, not just Immortal Rising, but as you'll see in this campaign, there's a couple of ash cans that we did on the side away from the main story that it's just a real joy to kind of work with him. Sometimes I don't hear from him, and then he'll be like, oh yeah, sorry, uh you know blah, this was happening, like he's had a kid, like his mom had medical problems, like, so it's like,
Yeah.
dude, I get it, it's not a problem. It's nowhere near as bad as, like, I haven't heard from him in 2 months, and I don't know if I'm ever going to hear from him, and I've only got 5 pages or something like that. So yeah,
Yep.
it's very different. And some of you writers know what I'm talking about out there. So
Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, no, I totally agree. There's a couple people I would give money to up front because I worked with them for a while
yeah,
and I trust them. I still wouldn't give them all the money up front, but
right,
I would give them a down payment.
yeah.
Um, but
And
man,
that's
for
that's
new
how
ones,
me and Jose do it. I'll like, actually, we're working on number 3 right now, and I gave him the first half of the sketch cash. So and he actually messaged me today. He's like, "Hey, I finally finished the sketches." And by finally, it's only been like 2 weeks, because Jose is known for, with his animation background, he'll just snap things out
Mhm.
super crazy fast. And he's like, "Oh, but it was on, I got my girlfriend's iPad. I forgot my other." It's like, don't worry about it, dude. We're not in a big hurry. It's fine. Yeah. But yeah,
uh,
if anything, just give half up front if you don't have a contract.
so when you took the characters that your players were playing,
Mhm.
did you feel a need to alter them in any way to like to fit into more like archetypes for the story, or was it more important to keep them at not 100% how they played them, but like more in the vein of how they played it, or did you find like some melding of the 2?
Yeah, it was definitely a melding of the two, because, like, I know their full career, right? I know
Mhm,
what they become. And so I was like, I kind of took that, and then I took the new, like the first level kind of aspect, and I tried to put it together so that if and when I do get to the point where they're at a higher level, you can see the full transition and it makes sense. Because when you play a character for, I don't know, 5 years or something crazy like that, maybe your play style has changed.
mhm,
Maybe the things, that the adventures they were going through, doesn't really make sense. Like for instance, I don't want to, no spoilers, but you'll have like a character that goes through its dark period, right?
mhm,
Where it's like, well, now he's kind of moody and he's an asshole, and you know it doesn't really fit with how he started, because it's 5 years later, and he's, or whatever, and he's 15th level or something. So,
mhm.
like, yeah, characters change over time, but I know I can pull the full thread from beginning to end, and I just want to boil it down into the basics. But I also played on tropes as well, because, like, some characters weren't one, they weren't finished. Maybe the player left the table, and yet his character continued as an NPC. So
Mhm.
some of that's in there as well. When I'm not going to say who it was, but yeah, there's definitely a melding of all of that.
Hmm, interesting. Um, so then since this is such a I guess you'd say such a pre-established um world with
Mhm.
pre-established characters, uh how do you work with your artist? Is it pretty much you just tell him what to do, or can he come back to you with ideas, or how do you work with other people on that?
Well, all right. So with Jose, he's basically a machine. He's a drawing machine. But I do allow him a lot of leeway. So when I give him a script, I don't give him like direction. I do get what basically what a script page looks like from me to him is I will have a set number of panels, right? Like these are the things that I want to have happen. I'll have who's in it, I'll say the dialogue, the emotion that they're supposed to have, any sound effects kind of stuff, and I let him choose. I let him choose the angles. I let him choose, how big the panel is, all of that, and because I trusted him, I've seen what he can do, and I'm just like, have fun, dude, And so as an artist, I'm like, play, let's see what we can play together, and do. So, yeah. Which over time has improved because at first I'm like, yeah, it should have an angle, over here, and it looks like that. It's like, no, dude, because and it was funny because at first I'm like, hey, if you if you feel you want to take some artistic licenses on things, that's fine. But here's what I had in my, and I have zero layout experience. I don't have any of that. So he kind of just did his own thing, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'll shut up now. You're right. We didn't need 6 panels or whatever I had come up with, because he knew a better way of making that scene happen in like one panel instead. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
So why don't you run us through the characters real quick while we're in this part here?
All right. So the main character of the low level group is Drake Hardy. He's an Elven Ranger. He's cocky because he's very talented at being an Elven Ranger. There's a joke in the first book where somebody's kind of giving him shit for being cocky and stuff like that, and he is. But at the same time, you find out through his interactions is like, well, yeah, he's really good in these ways, but he's also he kind of knows his limitations, and he doesn't necessarily overstep them, and he also he's not necessarily used to being a leader. So over time, he will stand out as the leader of the group. Spoilers, but that's basically the idea of the first arc. Is these 5 strangers coming together just to kind of like, find a way to work together to survive in this, like, this battle, this war environment. They're sucked into a war that, first of all, they have no idea what the hell is going on. It takes them a bit of time to figure that out. They don't know each other. They're literally taken from, like an elven fantasy type world and put onto a more human dominant Castlevania type world. So they're totally fish out of water. Isekai, I think, is a term. The very fish out of water and stuff like that. And they have to find a way to come together. Well, among all of that, the leader has to boil to the top, right? And that's what happens for Drake. He's like, I have to find a way to make this happen, or we're all dead. So we get to watch him, go through that. It's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. I guess the next one, Dareth, he is the firstborn prince of the kingdom that Drake comes from, and Dareth, he's a spoiled brat. He's a spoiled rich kid. He gets what he wants. He doesn't have to try hard for to be rewarded for things. And but he also wants to do well. He wants to do right by his station and his title. You find that out like in his introductory scene. It's like he has an argument with his brother Hero, and he's like, Hero's like, why are you changing your armor again? Because Dareth is more interested in fashion and status and looks. It's like, how is this perceived by my soldiers, and and Hero's like, yeah, I don't really care about all that stuff, and this is a big waste of pomp and circumstance and all this other stuff. But with Dareth, and over time you see him get humbled. You see him get humbled by the traumatic experiences that he goes through. He's like, oh shit, yeah, actually I am kind of a spoiled brat, and everything is handed to me, you know. And so we get to watch him kind of go through that as a character as well. So, which you know, each one of these characters have a special place in my heart. So I may ramble on a little bit about them.
No, no.
And then with Onai's introduced in the second book. He is the wizard of the group. He's like your, you know, the classic kind of nerd trope. He's he grew up on the world of Terra, where all this Castlevania world, right? Where vampires, like vampire elites, rule the world. They control the population in villages and towns, basically, like cattle. You know, like you're not allowed to go over here. You're not allowed to do this or do that, and especially you're not allowed to have magic. And with his backstory, little spoiler, his backstory is that his father had contraband books, you know, like magical books, magical tomes. So he has like a knowledge of metaphysics. He has a knowledge of natural law, things like that. And but the other side of him is that he cannot interact well with other people, right? Like he's a bookworm. He doesn't like, you know, he has this kind of thing where he doesn't like being touched. Is one of the things that you kind of see. He's like, yo, hey, don't touch me. You know, why are we interacting this way, kind of thing. But his knowledge of the world around him is in a different league compared to a lot of the other people because of his metaphysical knowledge and his magical ability. So and we get to see him kind of have to go through a lot of as well. Like, guess what, dude? You can't just stay locked in your room reading books. You got to get out there and make something out of yourself. So which is a pretty fun little arc, you know. I guess moving on, we got Muhammad. Muhammad's really interesting because he is the religious character. He's the religious trope, I suppose. You know, he's the cleric, and he also has a bit of a backstory that we don't get into until later, where you find out that he actually comes from a different continent, and he moved to the continent where the story takes place to become a cleric through the church, right? So again, a little bit more backstory, but the king of the vampires was recently killed a few years before the story takes place, and a church comes up around the hero that kills the main vampire, known as Dracula, right? It's which is a title, not Vlad Tepes. But so he destroys the king, and the hero has a religion begin around him. Well, Muhammad hears about this, and so he travels to the holy city kind of thing. He becomes a cleric and decides to fight for humanity against the undead oppressors kind of thing. And I really like him. A lot of people are responding well to him as well because he's a bit of a badass, but he's a real driven, like a focused dude. You know, not a lot of conflict within him for his intentions. You know, but one of his flaws is that so the undead lords had used magic. They regulated magical knowledge. And so like the commoners, they're just people, there is no magic basically without the undead. And so, and none of the commoners use magic, right? Except for these rare, examples. So anyways, he has no real knowledge of what arcane magic is. He just knows that the vampires and undead have ruled humanity and oppressed humanity using magic. And so in him, it's instilled in him that he immediately hates magic, which of course, that's where him and Onai clash right away. Yeah. He's like, you're a wizard? What, are you kidding me? Or do you serve the vampires as well? Kind of thing. And which is cool. But he's also kind of like, he's the meat shield, to keep it in role-playing game terms. He's the guy that's going to go out there and provoke the monster first. He's gonna take the licks, but he's also got the biggest, he's the big guy with the heart, right? Like,
Hmm.
although he'll bicker with the wizard, he's the first one to say, "Hey guys, everybody just needs to relax a little bit. Let's talk this out," because there's a lot of bickering with these young men in these stressful times. So, he's like, at times he can be the voice of reason, which is cool. I mean, a lot of people are responding well to him. So, and then
Excellent.
I guess the last one would be Hero. Hero Highwind is like, he is the second born. He's a twin of Dareth, but he was born second, and so he doesn't have all the privileges, and he wasn't held up and exalted as much. He didn't get the spotlight as much. He's a little resentful for that. He's the one who stayed in the shadows. I kind of play into that. Maybe some people don't. Say, oh, he's that trope or whatever. But with
Hmm.
comics, you really just gotta just, okay. He's this archetype. But and inside of Hero, when you first meet him, he's kind of like, he makes fun of Dareth, like, oh, you big prissy, whatever. And then as things go on, you realize, well, he's kind of got a skewed version or view of what's going on around him, because he was relegated to second born, right? Oh, he's Dareth's brother. He's Dareth's little brother. He's a second prince. He's not quite as important as Dareth, and so he literally has lived in his shadow his whole life, and so that's basically what his personality comes off as at first, is like, he is the shadow part of the group. He's the one that, maybe he doesn't always have the best thoughts. Maybe he has those intrusive thoughts and plays them out. So kind of something that you have to buy the book and read. But yeah, he's a pretty complicated character, put it that way. A lot to wrestle with.
Hmm. Um, so, when we started off, you mentioned that when you started writing this, you didn't see a whole lot of fantasy going on in comics. And with the exception of whoever's doing Conan the Barbarian, which
Yeah,
has historically been all over the place,
yeah.
what do you think makes a really good fantasy comic?
Well, I guess the first thing that makes a good fantasy comic is good characters. I'm going to just say that as a writer, it has to be a relatable character. Um, and what I meant by not a lot of really good stuff coming out of fantasy comics is like, sure, you have some fantasy, and I'm not trying to shit on my
Mhm.
competitors, but it'll be kind of like real two-dimensional, um, you know, reasons of why they're doing what they're doing. It's like, oh, it's just adventure, or she's just a badass, or whatever it is, and it's like you're not really you're not really exploring real human emotions. You're just kind of in a fantasy setting, and to me that's kind of boring. So, and then on the other side, you have classics like ElfQuest,
Yeah, yeah.
that go into all kinds of shit. So, which I don't know a whole lot about, but I do know a little bit. And yeah, but the average fantasy comic is just like, it's just there to be a fantasy comic. It's not really there exploring much, and being very in depth at all.
So I'm kind of curious now. Obviously, your books have a history from D and
Yeah,
D, but do you
yeah.
think overall D&D has helped or hindered the fantasy genre?
Oh, kidding me? D&D has helped keep it alive, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Because it spawned things like Forgotten Realms and
Yep.
Dragonlance, and fucking, I don't know, all the different, everything that came out, and all the campaign settings from like the 90s that I played in for second edition, Dark Sun and all that other stuff. Uh, that totally helped keep the fantasy genre alive. What else would you have? You'd have Conan, you'd have Elric,
Mhm.
and most people can't name much more outside of that. I suppose
Yeah,
you'd
other
have
than
like
like
the Terry,
Tolkien or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Or Terry
Tolkien
Brooks. Yeah.
or Terry Brooks, yeah, but not a real whole lot. But with, D&D, you can make your own. Clearly, like, you can make your own fantasy setting and stories and have as much fun as you want. And I think that's really what has kept fantasy alive in the end. And then, of course, when Jackson did the Lord of the Rings movies,
Mhm.
that was like a fucking steroid shot right into the fantasy genre, because nothing good had come out really for fantasy since the
Not in a
80s.
long time, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, I was
Uh,
there. It was like, man, there's like, when's the next? Oh, you got Xena and Hercules? Really? Like, that's so campy. It's only for some people,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and at first it was, oh, that's so cool because it's fantasy, or oh, she's hot. But then after a while, it's like, really, you're flipping around, you're screaming and all. It's so campy, and the armor looks shitty, over time. It's like real cheap and stuff. And I don't know. And then when you saw somebody take it serious again, it was just like a slap in the face, a
yeah.
welcome slap in the face.
I well, I definitely agree about historically. Although recently I've been wondering because it's like, especially if you look at manga, like
Hmm.
they very much like, okay, a goblin's like this, a
Hmm.
skeleton's like that, a cleric does this. Like even a book like Goblin Slayer, like they don't really have names, they just have their job titles. That's their
Oh,
names.
is that right? I
You
haven't
know?
read it
Yeah.
yet. I've heard a
Yeah,
lot
like
about it, but I haven't got into it.
it, I like it. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But like, he kills goblins. His name is Goblin Slayer. The cleric in his party's name is Cleric. So but I'm kind of noticing that too in some Western comics where it's like the cleric has to, like they have like a very specific character type. And
Hmm.
in some ways, I wonder if that's a little bit of a hindrance for people writing in 2024, because it's
Hmm.
like, oh, people expect this character to be this way. I have to either play
Oh,
to it
right.
or I have to go totally opposite it.
I see. So, well, it sounds like what you're saying is like, the tropes, right? The archetypes and the tropes.
Yeah, if
They don't
maybe,
stray from that.
yeah, like if D&D, because of the, especially the recent popularity of D&D, since all those live play shows blew up in
Hmm.
like starting in like 2015, like if because of that people got into it more, and now everyone like expects it to be like just this one thing, like your barbarian must be big and stupid, or
Right.
something like that.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not that concerned with it. As I say, yeah, D&D. Hey, what's up, Chris? Man, I don't have the comments up. What's up? Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be just restrained. So when
Mhm.
I designed the book and the story and everything, I'm like, I want these characters to be easily recognizable. That was something that me and the character design artist Steve Whitehead had talked about. Is like, they need to be easily recognizable to people who are not familiar with the story, and then also, like, they needed their own like color coding, which was
Yeah.
something that, as an artist, he said that he's like, okay, they need to separate them. They need different silhouettes, that kind of stuff. And so, yes, I'm leaning into archetypes and tropes, but I'm not just staying there. That's not the full point. And while I'm playing in those tropes, I'm gonna try different things as well. It's like, yeah, sure, this character is, oh, I see this character as this kind of archetype or trope, but at the same time, I'm going to spin a couple of situations at him where you're going to question that. You'll be like, well, maybe not. Maybe he's not,
Mhm.
maybe there's more going on there, because that's really what people are like. Like, they're not just cardboard archetypes.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's for a writer, actually playing some sort of tabletop role playing game can
Yeah.
really help you out because, you know, players will change over time, and especially as the situations they're in gets different. And then, so you can sort of see how that changes, and it gives you a chance to experiment with, the NPCs and how they would
Yep.
change and interact with people.
Yes,
So
definitely.
seems like it's a big boost. So Chris says tropes can be good for accessibility, but when they're relied upon too heavily, they can become confining and really limit character design development. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean that to me is like when you start to see things get too stagnant, like in a
Yep.
genre overall.
Well, and predictable, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay,
Yeah,
that's how Superman's gonna react to this, or
yeah,
Batman.
yeah. Well, oh man, don't get me started on Superman. It's just
I'm a Superman enjoyer, so I meant that in good faith, as well as Batman. Although
I
he might want to stop beating up poor thugs on the docks or whatever.
Yeah,
But
I mean, well, it's interesting because I've recently been reading the 1938, starting in 38, the series of Superman.
okay,
And I just enjoy that so much better
yeah,
than I do the modern stuff. Like,
hmm.
because Superman 1938, he's like a guy turned up to 11 as
Yeah,
opposed to like a deity. Like, the way they write him now, like, can you even really relate to the average human being? But in 1938, like in the first issue, he pretends, so there's a football player who's like the worst in the league, and
yeah,
his girlfriend's going to break up with him. So Clark Kent pretends to be this guy and plays the games for him for a whole season, uh
damn,
so that he's the MVP, and then the guy's girlfriend wants to marry him. Like
yeah,
Clark
and get some
spent
booty.
months. Yeah, Clark spent months helping a guy to get laid. I mean, he
Yeah,
really is the best of us. You
that's
know,
funny.
like
It's
you
like
have
a
that.
'90s friend
Yeah.
movie, right? Where they're like, was it Apple? Was it American Pie? Come on, guys,
Yeah.
we all got to work together to get laid. It's like, who does that?
And he's doing stuff like he takes Lois Lane to
Yeah.
an illegal nightclub,
Oh yeah.
where he knows she'll be in danger, but he does it because he wants to dance with her. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this guy's amazing.
Yeah. Gets her excited. The ultimate, yeah, truly. Yeah, he truly is a Superman.
But it's like, you wouldn't see a story like that these days.
No. No.
He's like the only thing that writers can come up with is Superman punches stuff, and then Superman punches stuff harder. And
Mm.
it's like, where's the character? But
Yeah, it's pretty boring. Yeah, yeah, I hear that a lot actually. Well, I hear that often about like Superman that he's not everybody can write for him. I think
yeah.
they get hung up on morality and like the morality issues. It's like, well, so Superman has to be this paragon of morality, and it's like, well, that's fine and everything, but at the same time, he grew up with humans, so not
Mhm.
saying he has to be flawed or oh he's innately a sinner or anything like that. I just mean like that, he's gonna have human sensibilities where yeah, maybe he's gonna fucking uh pose as a dude, some other dude to help him get laid. Hey, that might
Yeah.
happen. Whereas like, no, I must, take a Christ on a cross pose and orbit from space and ponder the human condition and all that shit. It's like, why? Like I
Yeah.
can't connect with that as much.
I think, well, I made a video which a lot of people hated a few months ago, but I think people confuse goodness and niceness, because they'll
Yeah,
do stuff like they'll have him flying around the city, like picking kittens out of trees and stuff like that.
yeah,
But if you go through like at least the first 6 issues, um, he's generally not on patrol. I think there was only one small story where he was on patrol. Otherwise, it's like when his boss is like, "Hey, there's a bank robbery going on over here. Go there," and he's like, "You got it." Or like he'll put him on the case of like mobsters or weapons smugglers and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, so it's like he's not really out there looking for it. Uh, which goes to my theory that Clark Kent doesn't really want to be Superman. He feels
huh,
obligated to be Superman
yeah,
because so I'm sitting about 60-minute drive from where Siegel and Schuster wrote Superman.
Okay.
And it's more a moral obligation that if you can help your neighbors, you are obligated to help them. It's
Hmm.
not that you necessarily want to. Like if you're on a farm
Yeah.
and you're riding your borders and you see that your neighbor's fence is broken, like you should put it up if you can. If their animals are gone, you help them get their animals back, and then you let them know that it's broken. You don't just be
Yeah.
like, oh well, and then
Yeah. Tough luck.
that carries from when he's in the farm to when he goes to what was unfortunately, I didn't realize Metropolis's original name was Gay City. Um,
Nice. I mean,
well,
having a gay time in the old town. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Yeah,
Uh
almost makes you wonder if it's San Francisco.
oh.
Yeah, it's just I think a lot of modern writers don't get it, especially when I see like foreigners writing Superman. It's like you don't really understand where he comes from.
Yeah.
But
Never been on the farm. That rural mindset is
yeah,
not. It's probably not easy for a city born and raised person to really understand. I was
exactly.
somebody a content person that I follow. He was talking about how because he does like analysis, cultural analysis and stuff like this, and he's like,
Mhm.
there's two very major different types, like the rural and the city dweller,
Yep.
and they really don't understand each other because they come from very different worlds, even though we allegedly share the same culture in America. It's like, no, if you live in Chicago your whole life, you have no idea what it's like out in the middle of Nebraska, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of a shame. It's like I try to explain it as like, if I were writing a story that took place in Paris and everyone's riding on bikes with striped shirts, carrying baguettes and wearing berets, like those are all French things, but
Yeah, I mean,
somehow
maybe
that's not
France of
coming
the
off
past.
as yeah,
Sorry,
and
France.
but it's not right.
Yeah,
So to me,
yeah.
whenever I read new Superman stuff, it's just like, oh,
Hmm. Yeah, they don't know how to do it.
yeah. But but getting back to more interesting fantasy. Um, so you mentioned the first three books are an early series. How, if you had your way, and every book is gaining in popularity, about how long do you think this series would be?
So, early on, I went on a crazy, I got to get it out of me spree, and I wrote it out to like 20 books, roughly.
Oh,
So,
okay.
which is quite a bit, but it tells the main character's story really well in about 20 books. So, if I can, now that I've have more experience writing it and figuring out how I want to say it, and how to really clean it up a little bit more, I could probably get it down fewer than that. And I
Hmm.
know in indie books and series and stuff, they never make it to like book 20, but I don't know. We'll see. Like I'm not going anywhere that as far as I can tell. So
So is this how would you say, like, is this a world that you would want to write other stories in, or that you plan to, either once you're done, or maybe like, oh, we'll take this like a side branch, a one shot with this character or something?
yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, if you scroll through the campaign page, I have an ash can that was in Anvil magazine number 2, which is a one shot. It's like I want to say it's like 8 pages.
Mm.
It's a self-contained story. Um, Now you got to go over. Yeah, there you go. Nope, the other way. Yeah, that's all
Mhm.
right. And anyways, it's called Baphomet's Child, and it follows
Oh,
a short story where a magical warrior is confronted with. So you get dropped into this part where he's wiped out a cult to one of the to basically a cult to Dracula, right? He's killed all these cultists, and because they've kidnapped a child, and he has to save the child's soul, so he has to go to the spirit world and confront the demon that has her soul. Has nothing to do with the main story, but it's in universe, and it gives a little bit of background, kind of fills out a little bit of the main church, right? The church, which actually you're sitting on the image of the deity, of the main deity of the the holy church of the world, Andronicus. And so you follow one of his like first disciples into this adventure where he goes into the spirit world and does all this stuff. So yeah, I do have, and I have a whole another side one shot where it explains or shows, I should say, Andronicus fighting and killing or destroying Dracula, which starts off his whole religion and everything, which is so badass, dude. I can't wait to do that one. I would like to be able to include that in the next campaign, but we'll see how money happens,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Let's.
yeah, there we go. So that is the comparison of the original version with the Indonesian artist Coparosa compared to Jose Garcia's work, and yeah, just lined it out, or side by side comparison, page by page, actually. So
very cool.
some people really like it. They really like seeing the comparison between the two, of just where it started and where it ended up. But also I wanted to offer it because it's not at like a basic $20 rate. I put it at $100 because it is I'm never going to print it again. It's more of like the collectible thing, but it's also for those people that have the extra money who want to get it. They want to contribute more to it than just my everything box, $100. So here is something else that is going to be a rare thing that you can purchase as well. So yeah, and I've got, out of 100 that I've printed, I think I have roughly 80 left. So people are buying them, thankfully.
Nice.
Which is kind of embarrassing, honestly, because just seeing what I started off doing, like that was the version of the story for like friends and family, when I was still learning how to write a comic book, that kind of stuff. So it's more amateurish than what I have. And it's, I don't know. I like it. And I like the art too. Like people are saying, hey, I even though he's not as good as say Jose, it's good art, So
yeah.
There you go.
It's definitely down here, this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So right
sorry,
there where you got the two books next to each other, those are the ash cans that I'm offering. Me and Jose did a short story, a black and white short story. It's a futuristic dystopian story that's featured in Arrow Comics' anthology Out of Obscurity. It's like 7 pages, and it talks about right there, it's like 2 of the last humans on Earth. They search for a cure for this this nanotech virus that has basically taken over the world. And so they go to this tower and trying to look for the cure, and where they encounter danger and have to conflict. It's good stuff, and you get to see Jose not drawing fantasy. It's future sci-fi kind of stuff, which is neat, and it's all in black and white, which is really nice, dude. Like his ability to do black and white, and then also his coloring is pretty impressive, especially because like I remember when we first hooked up and started working together, his coloring skills were not as good as they are now. So I'm glad that he went back, and because as I got closer to like launching the first campaign, I was like, hey man, do you mind going back over some of this stuff? Maybe, touching it up and all that stuff. And he was like, yes, please. It's kind of embarrassing, So I'm much better now. I was like, yes, you are. So yeah, that's what we did. So, I mean, look at that Baphomet under that Baphomet's child. That whole scene right there, man. Those colors are so great.
Yeah,
I love it. I really enjoy
definitely.
working with them.
Um, so you've got issue 1, issue 2 out, issue 3 is in production. The big
Yeah.
question: when are we going to get the source guide?
Source guide. I have a lot of it done. I really need to wrap my brain around how to lay it out, what I want it to look like. I do have all this art to pull from, so that'll be nice. Thankfully, Chris Fisk in the chat, he I kind of like harassed him and forced him to teach me Photoshop, so I could do a lot of my own graphics and dialogue change and stuff like that. So
Oh, nice.
I may be able to figure out in InDesign how to format a source book. So, and then I'll probably talk with, like I was saying, Victor Gorchev, be like, hey, dude, how can I translate this into, say, 5e so that people can use, well, and that, and like, was that CNC? What is that?
Hmm. Castles and Crusaders.
Castles and Crusades. Yeah. So if he can help me translate these stats into a couple of different versions, I'm going to put those in the book as well. Because yeah, it's based on D&D, 3.5 or second edition and 3.5, but like I want you to be able to pick it up and say, "Oh, I like that class idea. Let me take that class idea and put it in my game." You don't have to play in an Immortal Rising. You can, or if you enjoy the setting, you can flip through and kind of see, a more expanded explanation of some of the things. But I wanted it to also be able to, you can incorporate it into your own table, things that I don't really see out there in other like modules and supplements and stuff like that, stuff that is more unique to my world. So.
Hmm, interesting.
And I wanted,
And
so I guess in a roundabout way, I guess I would like to do it for the next campaign. Would be great. If I'm able to
ooh,
get it developed by then, we'll see. Because I do have a lot of it written out, but we'll
it
see.
takes a lot more work than people think to
It
make a
does.
decent source guide.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. I want it to
you
be
know,
quality.
yeah, like in if you're writing, let's say, just a book, like, oh, there's a magical door that opens here. But like
Yeah.
if you're making that in a source guide, it's like, okay, here's the magic that makes the door work. Here's what the players have to roll to be able to see the door.
Yep.
Here's the skills they could use to open the door. And it just
Yeah.
makes everything 10 times more complicated.
Yeah,
Um,
and then the narrative behind it, like if you're doing the module, you got to build a narrative of why it's there and who put it there or whatever else. So yeah,
yep.
definitely.
Now, just to make everyone angry with you, what edition of D&D do you plan on releasing it in first?
Well, the idea, like I was saying, is to put it out as like the stats and all that listed for fifth edition and
Mhm.
for Castles and Crusades
Oh, so you
at
do
the same
multiple
time.
editions at the same time. Oh,
Yeah, I
oh,
think I
that's
would like
impressive.
to do that. Like I'm gonna have stat block for fifth, and then next to it will be a stat block for Castles and Crusades. That
Wow,
kind of
that's
thing.
interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I really like the guys, Troll Lord Games. I really like those
Mhm.
dudes. They're super cool. I really appreciate that they are one of the, in my opinion, one of the bigger competitors in the field, and I think that they have a lot of staying power. And I
Mhm.
want to get on. I want to get in on that and encourage it. So I
Hmm.
definitely want to have them in have their gaming system involved. So if it's cool with
Oh,
them, which I think it will be.
very cool. Out of curiosity, have you seen Matt Colville's new game?
I have
I
not.
can't think of
What
the
is it?
name. I totally forget the name. A friend of mine backed it on Kickstarter. The
Hmm.
guy made like $3 million or something on it. But it
Right.
has some interesting conventions. But
Okay.
one thing that I thought was the most interesting is it becomes less and less game like, and it pretty much so For anyone who's not in the know in tabletop role playing world, there's like a sliding scale between sandbox, which means everything is completely random and you could do anything you want at any time, versus what they call on rails, which means there's a storyline and you're more or less expected to follow it.
Yeah, railroading.
Um, yeah, which I find that most people are happy to be railroaded as long as the choices are meaningful. But I've come to realize that there is yet another thing further out from railroading, which is people who want to do not competitive story, cooperative storytelling, where
Mm.
there's no game aspect. Like to be a game, technically, there has to be some element of chance in there. So
Yeah,
in
and
the
choice.
yeah, and in the original, like your characters died, they would just drop like flies because like everything was completely random.
Yeah,
And then with railroading, it's still possible to die. You still have to roll well enough to be able to achieve the things you want to achieve. But in
yeah.
the other one, the cooperative
Sandbox.
storytelling,
Oh, okay.
um, the way the game works, or so it seems, is that it's like, hey, you could just skip all this stuff as long as the players tell a cool story. How
Hmm.
do you think that and I've noticed a lot of younger people who play 5th edition have sort of similar views. Like some will just freak out if their character dies, or if they're not allowed to do this or that.
Yeah.
Like they can't get the magic item they want, or something like that. How do you think sort of pushing the end of that spectrum affects the tabletop role playing hobby as a whole?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. I guess cooperative storytelling. I don't know. That's kind of what we do, anyways. Like, so
Mhm.
them putting a new term or putting that term on the, and trying to define it better. I don't know. Like for instance, when I am kind of railroady, like I think I'm pretty good as a DM. I'm pretty good at like, okay, these are the things I want to have happen, which can be considered railroady. But at the same time, I also let my players, play around and kind of sandbox. It's like, well, I want to spend this time. Oh, we're in this town. I'm going, I've got enough money. I'm going to go, buy a house or something and
Mhm.
maybe set up, basically a layer, right? Well, that's fine.
Yep.
We can do that. But, you know, we still got to stay on track, and this cooperative storytelling stuff, I don't know. As long as it's, I guess for me, it doesn't really. It's just like a made up term, Like it's just
Mhm.
cooperative storytelling is what you are doing, anyways. Even if you're railroading, like the
Yeah.
players are still making their choices. Like they're still deciding I'm going to do this and die, or I'm not going to do this and die.
Yeah,
So
I think there's more to it. I think it's like,
Mhm.
like, with backstories. It used to be
Yeah,
like, I'm a dwarf out to get booty, gold booty,
hell yeah.
and, but now, like, okay, so I've been running a test game for my campaign for a couple of
Mhm.
years, and with this second test group that I have, like every like 3-4 months, I'll have like two people who have to leave for job reasons or something. So
Yeah.
I'm like constantly interviewing new people to join, and
Hmm.
oh my god, I get like 3 pages of backstory, and it's like you haven't heard anything about my world yet. How do you know any
See
of this
that
fits in there?
that's annoying as hell. I do have like one of the players, or probably a couple of the players that I play with. One in particular that I'm thinking of. He really enjoys the role playing aspect of it. He will
Mhm.
come up with a good backstory, but it's always like, I explain to them, okay, this is where we're playing. These are the kinds of things that you can kind of play around with, and then we'll match them together. It's like, well, I would like to have a character with this, and it's like, okay, well, how can that fit in to what I have planned? But they at least listen to what I have to say. Like they're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like
yeah.
pulling out of the fucking, out of some crazy side thing. They're like, no, no, no. This is what, we're playing in this one city, or at least starting in this one city, and he's like, okay, well, I want to play this type of character. Then, we kind of collectively figure out, and that
Mhm.
would be the cooperative storytelling part. It's like, okay, well,
Should
how
be.
can we have,
Yes.
yeah, how can we have your ass fit into what I have planned, and then I'd really like to play, I'd like to use their backstories to kind
Mhm.
of like fill in where we're going and what we're doing. It's
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
helpful. It helps me as a DM. Is like, shit, I don't have to think of any of that stuff because he already came up with it, So
Yeah, that's how it should be. That's how it should be. I see a lot of younger people, it's like, if you don't get to their backstory right away, they're
yeah.
all like, it's like, "We're doing this guy's backstory now. We'll get to yours, don't worry." You know?
Oh, I see. Yeah. They're like, well, I need my turn in the spotlight. It's like, well, no, no, the spotlight story is what the DM has going on. And we can work your shit into it. But as a role player, you need to figure out when you need to come in and say, no, I am, I'm the this or that, and this because of my backstory. And it needs to be worked in. Now, yeah, I can throw bad guys at you, or maybe even lead you into a dungeon that reflects on your backstory. But if the story isn't centered around your dude, then just chill, chill, and let it play out. That I don't
Yep.
know. That's the way we kind of do it at my table. At least me as a DM. We have
That's the
another
one that
DM
makes
who's
sense for
like,
me.
we have another DM who's much more story based. He's
Mhm.
like, he's gonna tell his story. He's like, okay, well, that's fine. Can we fight now? Like, can we get to fight now? So, but whatever. There's different styles to it. I've done it for so long. I don't know. I just it's so easy to just kind of go with shit, and a lot
Yeah.
of the arguments that I see online, I'm like, how is that even a thing? I guess like having new players all the time, especially new
Mhm.
players to the game,
Yeah.
would probably be difficult. But I don't know. A lot of times when we have new players, the other players have been around, are such veterans that they kind of find their own way with the help of all of us around.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you say that. I have now come to realize the importance of, at every point, like in a campaign guide, to make it so that people have an entryway. Like if they're just starting in the middle, they don't have to know all the backstory. There's
Yeah,
things for them to do right away.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the best way to do it. And then whatever. So the way me as a DM, the way I look at it is whatever keeps the game moving forward. Like I'm not just
Mhm.
trying to sit here and dwell on one dude at a time. Now, at the same time, I want each player to have their own spotlight, but the other players at the table kind of realize that, hey, his backstory is going to, he's going to play with his backstory for a minute, and we're going to go off and do this, and then
Mhm.
they know that eventually we'll come back to them, and we'll also kind of give them the same treatment. So I don't know though. That's one of the things that helps with having a regular table. Like we're used to playing with each other. So
Yeah. So Immortal Rising number 2, you've got a bunch of different categories, and it looks like,
yeah,
people have a little while left, so there should be, another payday or
I
2 before
I
it ends.
just launched. Yeah, I just launched on Friday, so we're doing really well
Wow,
so far.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it was like $1,200 in 12 hours, and for a no name comic book guy, that's not bad. So I'll take my victories where I can.
You've got great cover art, by Corey
Yeah,
Barton
Jimmy Reyes.
and Jimmy Reyes,
Yeah,
as well,
J- yeah,
with
Jimmy was
Jose. Mhm.
he's former Marvel artist as well. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, 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 yeah, yeah, I've had him on. Great guy. Works with David Finch a lot, so
Yeah,
fantastic
well,
stuff.
and the colorist is it Adrian Gardino or something like that. He does color work for role playing games, so it worked
Oh,
out well.
nice.
Y- Yeah,
Excellent. Um, So, is there anything else that we should know about the game, or
Well, I guess
sorry, not the game, the comic?
the comic, yeah. So I guess what I would say is go get, if you can, if you're so inclined, you like the art and all that stuff, go buy the Everything book. If you don't have the kind of cash to get the shirt and the ash cans and all that stuff, and you just kind of want to like dip your toe in to just kind of get a taste of it, I also have the floppies for basically at cost. So if you're interested, and you don't have, you're kind of strapped because like shipping is retarded right now. I've got the
Yeah.
floppies there for you. You can get the first story for like $10 in the floppy version. So, and the ones that you're looking at, that's the premium. That's the saddle, not the saddle
Saddle
stitched.
Stitch? Mhm.
No, what's it?
Oh, the
Permanent, the permanent presser. I don't know. I
oh,
can't think of
Perfect
it.
Bound. Perfect Bound.
Perfect
That's
bound. Thank you. Yes. And so, which that's the version that I think that everybody really, really enjoys. But I'm trying to get this into conventions and stores, and so that's why I'm offering the floppy version. With, like I said, basically at cost. So, and I think that you're going to enjoy it because if your crowd plays tabletop games, like you've had basic, I've seen you have Basic Expert on with his
mhm.
Makihito and all that stuff. So I know like your crowd enjoys. You're going to recognize. Um, Oh, wait 1 second. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I hear it. I hear it.
Okay. Yeah, my earbud just killed out or died.
Oh no.
So you're gonna recognize that all of those, it's gonna feel, I think, and I've heard from like Diversity and Dragons, like it's clearly a tabletop group. You get that whole sense and feeling, and that's what it'll be like in this case. Is like you get to kind of sit there and look at somebody's table game, and the characters are well thought out. They're well rounded, and some of them are likable, some of them kind of hateable, but the whole setting and everything is unique. The plot itself it's thick, it's fun. Yeah, just go give it a chance. And if anything, the anime, it's been described as Western anime manga of Jose
Mhm.
Garcia itself is just worth it to look at. Like it's so pretty. So you're gonna like it all the way around, guaranteed. And
Yeah,
yeah,
he
so
does
go
great
get it,
work.
dang it.
All right. Well, for anyone who's interested, if you are watching on YouTube, the link to the Indiegogo campaign is pinned on top of the chat, and it's also down in the description.
Yeah,
And for anyone who's in, uh, there are a lot of people watching on X, which is kind of surprising. But
nice.
go check out. Um, Go check out your channel,
Yes,
Mortal
please.
Rising, and I'm sure there's a link on there.
Yeah, actually, on my X profile, there's a link to my YouTube. I've got so recently I'm co-hosting a show called the Friday Nights with a couple of other
Mhm,
dudes. Before that, I also have a whole backlog of interviews and shows with people from the hashtag Iron Age, Comicsgate, and tabletop guys like Basic Expert. Who else? Irish Chronicles. Flying was or Scrying Dutchman. They've been on my show a whole bunch of times. So go pick through. You'll see topics that you might like. Between like BattleTech and you know gargoyles to Makihito. Like there's
mhm.
all kinds of stuff, and it's fun. So go check me out.
Go do that. And for everyone else, tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, I will be on the Basic Experts channel talking
Nice.
about Empire of the Undying Sun. That's my campaign guide, which you could find at empireoftheundyingsun.com. If you go and you sign up and register on the website before the launch of the campaign guide at the end of September, you will get one free module written by Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver. Um,
Oh, nice.
Friday, I will be on the Dungeon Delvers channel playing classic Gamma World, uh, who I will probably die because it's Gamma World. And Saturday, I will be on the Dungeon Ministers channel for the Nerd Council of Doom, where we talk about all things nerdy and world domination.
Nice. Man, I
And
liked it. I like the circles
thank you.
you like. We're kind of like circles slightly outside of each other. So I'm glad that we finally met. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
watched your show a few times, and yeah,
Oh, thank you.
I was looking forward to this.
So without further ado, must bid everyone a good night.
Yeah, have a good night, guys.
See you guys soon.